Hey everyone, this is going to be a video on Z790 versus Z690. This video may be split into more than one part if it comes out too long. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm going to start this video with just a quick introduction of what I have on the table in front of us, and then we'll move on to what I plan to do. Okay, so in front of you, you have the Z790 Strix and the Z690 Strix Hero. Okay. Now, I'm not going to do the unbox because I've done a video on the Z690 Hero unbox. The Z790 Hero has the exact same contents. That's it. Okay? So just to show you guys how identical these boards are, this is the cooling solution for the heat sinks for the NVMEs. You'll notice they are identical. Okay? Same goes for the ReRAM heatsink. They are identical. Okay? To the point where they are interchangeable. Okay, so for those that are not aware, the main differences between Z690 and Z790 is the I/O. Okay, so with Z790 for the PCIe lane chipsets, okay, on the chipset you get 20 instead of 12, okay, 4.0s, and you get 8 3.0 instead of 16 3.0, like you did on Z690. All right, and aside from that, everything else is pretty much. I think you get one more additional USB 3.2 Gen 2x2, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head. And yeah, and they dropped the support for Intel Optane memory on Z790. All right, but if you're talking about support for 13th generation chips, the performance should be identical on Z690 and Z790. In fact, I'm not even sure which one I'm pointing to because they're so identical. Okay. So there was a post on the internet, I think someone made a video where their 12700K was underperforming on a Z690 cheap ass ASUS board. I don't know which one. Okay. I'm not saying that cheap boards don't matter. I'm just saying most likely needed a BIOS update. And because of that video or that post, this whole slew of bullshit articles came online about underperforming with Z690. I think a lot of those situations, you really just need a BIOS update. Intel themselves have said to Ars Technica in an interview that there is no performance difference, whether you're running Z690 or Z790. And I think Intel knows better than some random guy on YouTube. Okay? So, with that said, I just want to point out one more thing. Now, for those of you who've been on the Intel game for a long time, you know Intel likes to play stupid games. All right, this is an example of it. So when I talked about USB and Gen 4 NVMe, PCIe lanes, etc., all that crap, a lot of the lower end boards, they're not going to have this many USB ports, right? They're not going to have that many NVMe slots. So Z790 on that is almost irrelevant compared to Z790 on high-end boards. Now, this Strix is, I think, $700. So let's call it a high-end board, okay? Because I think it falls into that category price-wise. So if we look at the Z690, this is Z790. I'm sorry, this is Z690. This is the Z790. You'll notice that the USB ports, we have more of them here now, okay? And, sorry guys, this is loose because it holds onto a backplate. And the Z790 Strix has a backplate, okay? Finally. Now, the backplate, these holes, and the backplate, I'm pretty sure this is just the same thing as the Z690 formula backplate, just different color, different branding. But I'm sure this PCB, the bare PCB, is the same as the Z690 formula. Okay, the components might be different, but, which I'll come to right now. So if you'll notice on the I/O portion of the board, okay, we have some differences because the I/O is different. But in terms of in relation to the CPU, before that, you'll notice also the MV. There's some changes. Well, not really, but there's a minor change here for the heatsink. Okay, but if we look at the power delivery, okay, and we look at the traces from the memory and their distance to the CPU socket, okay, and aside from the holes for, like I said, just a scooting, you see where the hole would be here? There isn't a hole here, all right? Stuff like that. But if you look on the back, okay, you look at all these components related to the memory itself, and all the components relating to the powering the CPU and the traces, you'll notice they are exactly identical on both boards. So there's nothing new here. And that's why one reason why you don't see ASUS making a Z790 formula. There's no point, right? They'll put out one board that probably sells the most, like the Strix and the Art or whatever, and they'll put out an Extreme because the Extreme. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing that's changed on the Extreme, I didn't look at the I/O, but I'm thinking that might have changed a bit, and you get a colored OLED thing here instead of the black and white. So looking at this, there shouldn't be any performance differences when you socket a 13900K in either one of them. So in this video, we're going to test that. And I'm going to bring up one more thing about that. XMP. Most folks do not understand what XMP is. XMP is overclocking your CPU. I'm going to put up a little graphic right now so everybody can see what the maximum supported DDR5 speed is on 12900K and 13900K. On the 13900K, off the top of my head, I may be wrong if the graphic comes up and I'm wrong. Off the top of my head, I believe it's 5600 megatransfers per second. So anything over 5600 megatransfers per second is overclocking. Okay? I don't care if it's DDR6000, it's still overclocking. So, therefore, your CPU's memory controller becomes very important. Now, I have here the kit I'm going to use for this. It's not in the box, but I have the kit, obviously. This is a DDR5 7600 kit. This is the second fastest kit G-Skill makes. The fastest kit is an 8000 kit, which I don't have, and I don't really plan on buying because I'm not a world record chaser. Okay? And this kit, I can tell you right now, will not run on the 3 12900Ks I have. No dice. Okay? I haven't tried it on 13th gen yet. I will on these boards, but I have a pretty good feeling that it might go. I have a very low chance because most of the 13th gen chips will do 7000 no problem. That's not saying that my 13900K is going to be able to run this. That's something that people need to understand. Just because the motherboard can support it or it's on the QVL doesn't mean your chip will run it. Let me repeat it again. Just because the memory kit is on your QVL for the motherboard, and just because the kit has an XMP of whatever speed, does not mean your CPU can run it. This is the setup, and so what we're going to move on to now is I'm going to put the boards back together like they were before. I'm going to socket this first on Z690 on the latest BIOS, and then we'll run some benchmarks. Then I'll put the chip on the Z790, we'll run some benchmarks, and we'll see the score differences. And then I'm going to tackle one more item, which is, like I was saying earlier, I don't know if this kit will run on this chip. So we'll try it on Z690, and if it doesn't work, will it get better if I use it on Z790? So there's this conception that Z790 is going to somehow magically help you run faster memory. And I don't think any representative or anybody from like a motherboard company is going to want to come out and say no, but I think no. Okay? Reason being, like I said, this part is identical. Okay? Now, for certain boards like the Z790 Apex, if you had a first gen Z690 Apex revision 1, there was some issues retaining higher memory speeds with that. They were fixed that with the Z690 Apex released earlier this year. Okay, so for those boards in that kind of a situation, yes, the Z790 Apex will run faster memory than the Z690 Apex, depending on which revision you have. So there are those like niche circumstances, but like I said, this is what I plan to do. And with that said, let's get cracking. So here is the Z690 Hero up first. All right. You can see I'm using the G-Skill DIMMs I was telling you about. I'm going to first run just from CPUZ, and we'll take a look at the numbers. All right. So let's just do the simple stuff. Just do a bench. So you can see I have hardware info on the side here. you can see the clock usage 100% earlier. And if I can get my clock boost to show. Okay, so that, I think that actually finished already. So 16,689.3 and 910 on the CPU single core. Okay, so let's move on to CINBENCH. All right, so right away, I can also mention that this is a DIMM kit that did not boot on the 12900K that I tried with. Well, I think 3 of them. This is XMP, just XMP1, nothing else in the BIOS outside of a custom fan curve for those fans in there. But outside of that, I didn't adjust anything else. And I think that's a fair representation of how most folks who buy these boards, you know, they don't really have the memory knowledge to do a lot of the adjustments. So let's do a single core real quick. I'll let that run. And I'll come back when the single core is done. I don't want you guys to sit through 10 minutes of this stuff. I walked away for quite a bit, but the CPU multi came in at 38,097. You know, these kind of points can be a little bit different depending on how much it decided to clock down. For those that don't know, when you're running multi-core benchmarks like this, you're going to tax your CPU like you never will in gaming. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to run TIMESPY real quick with this setup. Just a little background, that's a 4080 Founders, no overclock, nothing, just stock configuration. I'm going to run one TIMESPY run, and then I'm going to run another TIMESPY run along with the CPUZ and CINBENCH when I have the Z790 Hero in. All right, so TIMESPY is finished. I ran it in 1080p because I figured I'd give the CPU more of a run for its money. So let's take a look here. CPU score 25,090. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind as we move forward. Let's look at detail monitoring. Let's see. So pretty much I sustained 5.5 gigahertz CPU across, 2775 on the GPU across. All right, so pretty much flatline all the way. All right, so let's try now with the Z790 and we'll see how we go. So the Z790 Hero is in now. Not that you could really tell since it looks exactly the same, but I'm in the BIOS. I'm going to just take this time real quick to teach people how to do fan control in the BIOS. I know it's completely unrelated to the video, but I see folks asking all the time, like, because ASUS Fan Expert just kind of sucks. So what I'm going to do is first, you want to go to monitor, you want to go to fan speed, QFan configuration, and if you do QFan tuning, it takes a little bit. It will ramp up every fan to 100%, and then it will ramp the fans down to 0. And that kind of gives it, kind of picks up if it's PWM, DC, etc. And then it also lets you kind of get the idea of the RPM it can run and the max RPM it can run. This is kind of similar to if you're using the fan configuration test in ASUS Fan Expert, which I haven't used in a long time because I normally use Aqua computer controllers. But when I see folks not showing how to do their fan, this is the easiest way to do it because you're not reliant on software that's in Windows that may crash if Armor Crate's not running, etc. This is on the BIOS end, so it's always running. So I'm using, obviously I'm water cooling the CPU. So for me, I'm not going to use CPU temp to control my fans. I'm going to use the water temp to control my fans. And once this QFan is done tuning itself, I'll show you how that goes. This sometimes takes a couple minutes. The more fans you have, the longer it's going to take. I only have 2 headers filled, so it shouldn't take that long. So you see that now that it's done, it's given its kind of own minimum cycle duty. And minimum cycle duty means the minimum fan speed that it's going to use. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK to that. But if I come back to fan speed monitor, you can see that CPU option, chassis fan speed 1 is a 727. And chassis 4 fan speed is at 1,288. So you can tell it picked up the fans that I have going in there. And I believe this is the one I have the 3 on the radiator too, and this is my pump. So obviously I would like to put that on water pump speed, but since I did not, that's fine. I will go to QFan configuration. I'm sorry, I forgot which ones I had. So it's 1 and 4, right? So I'm going to come down to fan configuration. I'm going to ignore all this. I'm coming down to chassis. So chassis 1 fan picked up its PWM profile. I'm going to say to the water out T sensor, because that's where I have my water sensor at. I'm going to put, see, this is where you're setting the points like a graph, right? You could also do the Q fan control, this thing on the top, to do like kind of a graph kind of deal, this Q fan thing, but I just do it here. So I'm going to say 0.1 temperature. I say the lowest I'm going to say is 25, right? 0.2 being 30, 0.3 being 35, and 0.4 being 40. This is water temperature, okay? So 100% full pump speed, right? And then 0.3, I'm going, actually, you know what? I think this might be, channel 1 might actually be that 3 fans on the top on the radiator. So you know what? That's fine. That's fine. I'll leave it at, you know, let me lower this. I don't want the world's loudest fans. Okay, so I'll save that. Then I'll come down to channel 4. Come on, let's go, let's go. All right, so I know that's PWM. I know it knows it, so I don't really need to worry about it. We'll do T sensor, water tank sensor out. So you get 4 points. I think on the older boards you get 3 rather than 4, but okay, so we'll raise this to 25. We'll raise the second temperature to 30. Just similar to what I was doing earlier. Oh, oops, okay. And then 40. And we'll just say the minimum duty cycle being 60. And then obviously it's gonna have to be higher. And you can hear, I don't know if you can hear it, but I have bubbles in this loop because it's fairly new, but I just heard the pump speed go up. So I'm gonna change this to 75, and that should raise it to 75 as well, because obviously the next cycle can't be lower in speed. And that pretty much is fan control in a gist. Obviously, like I was saying, you can come to Q fan control, and you know, you can kind of play with the sliders. It kind of does, you see, that's exactly what I just did just now. Okay, so, and then in terms, let me just save that real quick, because I'm gonna mess with the board after this. Where's my save? Oh, there we go. So I'm gonna save this to just call it base, save the profile. And what I was saying earlier about these, all I'm doing here is going XMP1, and then multi-encouragement, I'll leave that at auto. Normally that turns on. I'm in Windows now. You can see that it does say Z790 Hero on here. I don't know how well that's gonna come through since it's kind of small, but I'm gonna run the CPU test real quick. All right, so let's come to bench CPU. That's the fan running up. I guess I did let it go all the way to 100 at the end, or 80%. Okay. You can see, let's see, what am I averaging? 5.5 and a 5.8 on one core. That's probably from the single. So there's the score themselves. I don't remember what the score was previously, but that looks kind of similar. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to run CINBENCH. Okay. If you hear bubbling across the sound that's coming off, it's because, like I was saying earlier, I have a fairly new loop in there. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to run the single core, and then I'm going to run the multi-core, and I'm going to come back and have the results up on both. Okay. So I'm going to start the single core now. And I'll let this finish. I'll come back, run the multi, and see where it goes. I just want to come in here and say, this is with the multi-core finished. I had to update the Intel management engine before it would even not crash on multi-core. Just want to throw that in there. So if you're having stability issues, keep your stuff updated. I'm gonna run the single now, and then I'll do the TIMESPY afterwards. All right, so the single core is finished at 22,249. I don't even remember what the other one was. I will go over it at the end of the video. Now I'm gonna launch 3D Mark, TIMESPY 1080p. I'll run that, come back. So that's TIMESPY having wrapped up. I believe the CPU score now is 25,108. Don't remember what the other one was. Like I said, I'll go over it at the end of the video. Just want to see my boost. I pretty much maintained 5.5 like I did in a flat line like last time. So my boost remained the same. And yeah, so I'm going to bring this down together when I put the numbers on a chart. So we'll take a look. So here we have the results. As you can see, it's very close. I think the largest difference is the CINBENCH multi. And I think that really comes down to the chip having throttled a little bit more on the Z690 board. I did notice that when I looked at the hardware info. I think if I had put a temperature limit on the boost, it might have maintained a better boost clock all the way rather than hitting a very high temperature, then throttling, etc. But the rest of it is, within a margin of error. You could probably run it a few times, take the average, and get the same. Okay, so there's no real benefit to Z790, which is kind of what everyone would know if marketing wasn't there trying to sell you Z790 boards all day long. And I've seen people make that side grade. It's extremely stupid. And it's just, a lot of things like XMP, people just don't pay attention. They don't read, they just buy. So with that said, I just want to bring up, if you're one of those people that refuses to buy AMD products, I get it, but if you want to be on the Intel platform for whatever reason it may be, look into Z690 if you're buying now. You can get some really cheap boards. I think for me personally, I think on the higher end side of things, I think the best board I've seen recently on sale is the Z690 Kingpin. It's $529. I'm not a huge fan of most EVGA boards, but the classified is cheap here. The formula is on sale. If you're open to, say, $549 for the Z690 Hero rather than $700 for literally the same board, versus some USB ports that you really won't care about. But this is pretty much like a good option to cut down your board costs, because the Z790 boards, even for the lower end, they even make less sense because they don't even have those NVMe options on them. You get what I'm saying, guys? So this is one way to, save some money because it's a dead socket. I mean, the next gen chips are going to be, I think, socket 1851. So with that said, oh yeah, one more thing. If you're gonna buy used, like I'm bringing up here, if you're buying used, always buy from Amazon warehouse, right? Because then film it if you need to, if it's a high value item. But when you buy from like other places, not Ant Online, but places like, I don't know what the fuck this is, NeoBits, stuff like that. It's very hard because it's a third party. Then you're fighting with a third party to get your money back. Even though Amazon might side with you, it's just a lot easier to do all Amazon, right? And if you have a micro center near you, this is like, I mean, anybody that has a micro center near them, if you go to clearance, open box, like I'm just picking New Jersey, you can really clean out here. Where's the motherboards? I just highest price. But yeah, like stuff like this, 419, 350 on the 670E. All right, so Z690, 337. You get the idea, right? So stuff like that. Take advantage of things like this if you have it available to you. But with that said, thanks for watching. Stay safe. Got the results that we kind of expected. But have fun out there. Take care.